y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to tell y'all what it's like to hike without a sense of smell, or in fancy medical terms, what it's like to hike with anosmia. People can develop anosmia for several different reasons, but mine was definitely due to COVID. I noticed right after I got done with my thru hike of the Pinhoti Trail in January 2021 that I had completely lost my sense of smell and taste. So I went and got tested, and sure enough, COVID positive. Within less than a week or so, my sense of taste started coming back, and I had hoped that my sense of smell was going to come back before I started my thru hike of the Florida Trail, but unfortunately I went the whole duration of my Florida Trail thru hike with no sense of smell. And when I say no sense of smell, I mean I couldn't smell anything at all. I could sniff hand sanitizer and nothing. Now you might be thinking, well, that's awesome. What better time to lose your sense of smell than when you're heading out on a thru hike? That way you don't have to put up with your own hiker stench, or anybody else's for that matter. And that is true. There definitely is a sunny side, if you will, to losing your sense of smell before you go out on a thru hike. You don't have to smell your own farts or anybody else's, or your doo-doo. And sometimes on the Florida Trail specifically, I felt like I had put in a cheat code or something, because most people who thru hike the Florida Trail have to deal with the challenge of sulfur water. It's safe to drink, but typically our bodies don't want to ingest something that smells like a rotting egg, so it can be a bit of a challenge. And that's not even in the drinking water sources, but one time specifically in the Swanee River section, I remember we camped at a spot where kayakers typically come through, and they had hot showers. And so I was so excited, I took a long hot shower, and when I got out of the shower, Marty looked ill. He looked sick. And I asked him what was wrong, and he's like, "How could you stand being in there? I threw up in the shower because it smells terrible, and we both smell like rotting eggs right now." And I had no idea. I actually thoroughly enjoyed my shower. But while I don't necessarily want to smell something that smells like a rotten egg, I did kind of feel like I didn't quite earn my thru hike like other Florida Trail thru hikers did, because I didn't have to go through those challenges. And so maybe there's a little bit of disconnect too between me and other people who have thru hiked, because when you talk about stories of your past thru hike with other Florida Trail hikers, the sulfur water is something that definitely comes up, and I just can't relate in that way. And while I was definitely glad not to smell my own hiker stink, it made me a little bit uneasy when I was around other people, because I didn't know how sorry to feel for them having to smell my stinkiness, because I couldn't quite gauge how disgusting I actually was. And on the East Coast especially, you've got that extra funky hiker funk, because the climate is so much more humid than on the West Coast. And in the swamps of Florida, I can only imagine how much that took things to another level. And then of course, there's missing out on things like flowers blooming and the smell of fresh cut wood when people have come through and done trail maintenance. I remember at one point specifically asking Marty, "Can you smell this wood on the ground right now? Like all the sawdust, and how strong does it smell, or has it been cut for a couple of days?" Because you don't even think about the stuff that you can learn from your sense of smell. Like, hey, there was a trail maintenance crew that came through today, or this has been down here for a couple of days. Coffee in the morning, the smell of rain and campfire, these were all things that I used to love so much about being out on trail. And I would have these thoughts in my mind like, hey, I should smell this at any moment now from something that I would see, but then the smell would never come, and it was just kind of disappointing each time. And it even rolled over into town, because smell and taste are closely related, although I will say, even if you don't have your sense of smell, you can actually still taste, so that was interesting to discover. But my taste was definitely much more muted, so I wasn't quite as excited for food as I would have been on trail or in town. And aside from things that I just wanted to smell on trail, there are also some things to be concerned with as far as safety goes when you don't have a sense of smell. For example, the smell of fire. There may be a prescribed burn or a wildfire, something with smoke that you need to be aware of in the area. And this doesn't even have to be a big wildfire heading your way, but even something like you're cooking dinner and something nearby your bandana has caught on fire and you can't smell the scent of something burning. Now, yes, you should be attentive to your pot at all times, but things happen, people get distracted, and having that sense of smell can alert you to the situation before it becomes a big issue. Also, not being able to smell my fuel canister if it's leaking because I haven't turned my stove off properly. There was a time that Marty actually had to point that out to me, like, hey, I think your gas can is leaking because I can smell it. And given if I'm in my tent, then I would assume it's ventilated enough to not really cause an issue. But who wants to be breathing that stuff in if they don't have to? Also, on a 0 day in town, due to distorted taste and no smell, I unfortunately ate some rotten yogurt. And not so much a safety thing, but while you're hiking, especially if you're not hiking and you can smell a campfire in the distance, then you know you're probably coming up on somebody else's camp. So you could say, all right, well, this campsite ahead is probably taken, so we can just stop at the next flat spot we see, or we need to quiet down a little bit because somebody must be at this next campsite and we don't want to disturb them. It's just one of those things that in the past, being alerted to somebody is up ahead at a campsite is a good thing. And water can be a safety concern, not so much the rotten egg smell, but knowing if you smell a dead carcass where you're about to scoop up water. And thankfully, I had Marty with me, so if he had smelled something like that, he could have told me, but I hated having to lean on somebody else for that stuff. We actually did come across a dead manatee. It was clearly out in the open and it was in a channel I wasn't going to drink from anyway. But it's just the point that being able to smell and go, maybe I'll just pick the next water source because it smells like something died around here. While I was through hiking the Florida Trail, I mentioned in my videos that I didn't have a sense of smell. So a lot of y'all since then have been asking me, hey, have you gotten your sense of smell back yet? Has anything improved? So I wanted to update y'all as far as where things stand now. In June of 2021, so about a month after I had completed my through hike of the Florida Trail, I smelled coffee brewing for the first time one morning and I was so excited. And after that, different smells kind of started coming back. They were still kind of faint, but I could actually smell. And then unfortunately, within a week or so, my anosmia turned to parosmia. And that's where your sense of smell can just be very skewed. I noticed that things like coffee, gasoline, food, especially meats, cooking, and doo-doo all smelled exactly the same. Now, they don't all smell like poop or all smell like gas as you would normally think of those scents. They just all have the same horrible stench that I have never smelled before in my entire life. I used to love to go to coffee shops, and now walking in a coffee shop is absolute torture. Campfires now smell absolutely rotten, the same similar smell that all of those things smell like. My toothpaste tastes disgusting. So it's not only affected the way that things smell to me, but also my taste was normal and now it's absolutely not normal. So for a while there, I would definitely say that I was in a worse position than when I couldn't smell at all and I had pretty normal, although muted taste. And I'm in one of the support groups for the post-COVID parosmia on Facebook, and people have tried all sorts of things. Smell training. There was this method of you could flick somebody in the back of the head and it would reset that stuff. People have been to chiropractors, ENTs, all sorts of stuff, and there are just very few doctors out there that are experienced at treating this. Thankfully, I'm one of the more mild cases of parosmia. My mom, my sister, and my aunt have had it much worse, and they have all lost a significant amount of weight because they cannot force themselves to eat food that smells and tastes so horribly. Some people have luck with nose clips. Thankfully, again, mine is more mild, so I haven't had to go through all of that most of the time. I can just suffer through eating whatever doesn't smell or taste great. But there are even some people in the group that I'm in on Facebook that have lost so much weight that they're now on feeding tubes from having parosmia. And you don't realize how truly isolating it can be when you'd rather sit at home than go meet friends at a coffee shop or go out to a restaurant. with people because you can't stand the way that things smell and certainly the way that things taste. So anyway, if you had COVID and you're experiencing any of this that I'm talking about right now, you are not crazy. And there are a lot of other people out there that are going through the same thing. I have recently been doing the autoimmune protocol diet because I've got some autoimmune things going on that I don't think are directly related to me having COVID. I think I already had these issues. COVID could have pronounced them, but it's an anti-inflammatory type diet that I'm working on, and I am going to continue this when I go backpacking this year. So if you're interested in eating healthier on trail, I'm going to be figuring that out. But my goal is that the inflammation in my body will go down from this diet, and hopefully it will help me in a lot of different ways, including the parosmia. So it's been over a year and 2 months now since I have smelled and tasted things normally. And while having anosmia and parosmia hasn't kept me from going backpacking, smell and taste are just some things that you don't realize how much you appreciate that until one day it's gone. So if any of y'all are going backpacking soon and you smell some blooming flowers, and especially if you're sitting around a campfire and you're getting that natural smoke hiker deodorant on yourself, because let's be real, campfire, unless you have parosmia, smells a lot better than hiker stench. Y'all think of me and really soak it in and enjoy it. All right, y'all, well, that is all I have for you today on hiking without a sense of smell. If y'all have any questions, though, about anosmia, parosmia, etc., feel free to leave those in the comments and I will answer them for you, or at least based on my experience. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and we will see y'all next time.